Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch. Today, I got to sit down with Mike Anderson and had a wonderful chat with him. He is the Scheels Outdoor social media marketing specialist, and he also is the host of Scheels Outdoor podcasts. This guy has his hand in so many wonderful things, and he creates some ridiculously amazing content. We talk about kind of his genesis in the outdoor world, where he was fishing at his granddad, going and catching suckerfish out by the river when he was a little kid, and then kind of getting into hunting with rifle and then bow hunting, and now where he's taking his kids out in the outdoors and introducing the outdoors and the love of that to them and his little girls. So yeah, it's kind of been a full circle conversation. We had wonderful chats and really talking about what Scheels Outdoors does that differentiates them from other, outdoors and sports recreation stores, and we really kind of highlighted a lot about why I think it's going to be different when you go to Scheels Outdoors and the different places. I think that he said, there's 36, 37 something stores out there in about 16, 17 different states. I have to look up the stats to be exact, but it's growing. And, I've been out to the Colony store in Texas, which is their largest one to date. And that place is absolutely amazing. I mean, I could go on for a long time talking about how incredible this store is. If you guys have a Scheels near you, if you're traveling through a city that has one, you need to stop and check it out. It's an experience in and of itself. Scheels Outdoors, guys, go check them out. Follow him online. Make sure you're following Mike Anderson and all the wonderful content he's putting out. Go check out his podcast. And you guys, you're going to really enjoy this podcast. He's got a lot of great stories to share. So without further ado, here is Mike Anderson with Scheels Outdoors. Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing great. I am doing great. I'm excited to chat with you, man. It was cool how we kind of got in touch, about a month ago and started talking about your role over there at Scheels. And, I figured before we kind of dive into that, I'd love to hear about how you got kind of started at your love of the outdoors and kind of your genesis of your outdoor experience.
Okay, yeah, that's it's a little bit of a lengthy and interesting process. I've been into the outdoors ever since basically I could walk, Growing up, kind of lived out in the country and my mom grew up in a family of 15 brothers and sisters. So just they grew up on a farm, hunting and fishing and cattle and yeah, it was just the outdoors was huge. They lived outside, whether it was like playing football or going fishing or going hunting. And so it was just kind of like ingrained to me right from the start. But some of my youngest memories is just like going to the river at my grandparents and we'd go into the garden and dig for some worms and then we'd go try and catch suckers in the river and stuff like that. I mean, if I look back, I've got an old Polaroid with me finding a stick and can holding up about 5 6 suckers on there, and that's those are some great memories. I'd get to my grandparents' place and I'd see my grandpa walk out of the shop, and the first thing I'd always ask is, hey, can we go fishing? And I don't think he ever said no. So
Nice.
that's kind of, just kind of getting into the outdoor stuff. And, I had a lot of cousins too that would be like older than me and starting out going hunting. And I'd, ask them and my dad, like every time, how'd you go? Did you see anything? And just, chomping at the bit to have my turn to get out there. And, you know, starting out with my dad's old recurve bow that I found in the garage and just flinging arrows at sparrows in the yard. And I think I got like one of them out of about 100,000 shots, but it kind of started that whole thing.
Well, and you kind of, I guess, and you grew up in Minnesota, right there. So you had to wait until you were, was it 10? Is it at that the age limit before you could get out there and start kind of hunting? And is what was the parameters there?
Yeah, things have changed a little bit since
Right.
you have like the youth seasons now.
Mhm.
But when I started, I think it was even 12 actually.
Okay.
So I did, get your hunter safety and then you could, start out and go hunting. But yeah, I mean, I was hooked from the start,
Sure.
absolutely. And now I actually hopped across and live in Fargo, North Dakota now. So the nice thing about Minnesota is they allow for lifetime licenses. So I made sure to get my lifetime fishing and hunting licenses in Minnesota and then hop over to North Dakota. So now I can hunt two states every year basically as a resident. So that's super cool.
What a tough problem to have, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's terrible, just terrible. The thing I really like about it is North Dakota has mule deer, and I'd never hunted mule deer before. Like I grew up in, we've got land where it's a lot of bigger wood stuff mixed in with fields and things like that. So I grew up sitting in a stand and waiting for the animals to come, and then it was like, oh, I spend $30 and I can get a tag for any deer in North Dakota, and I can go take my bow and go to the Badlands and chase mule deer. Yes, I am absolutely in on that. So I'd never really experienced the whole spot and stock thing until I really moved to North Dakota. I'd gone on a couple of elk hunts and like that was amazing, like super fantastic. But like being able to drive 3 hours, 3.5 hours and get out and spot and stock, and it's just an absolute total change of pace. And I think it's really helped me understand a lot about deer movement and ways to hunt and things like that. And like I've got a little bit of ADD with that too. Like don't get me wrong, I can sit during the rut, I can get in the stand and I can sit there the whole day. But I would much rather try and make my own luck and actually chase after them. So
Yeah. No, I mean that's the most fun is for me is doing that and that I remember you kind of talked about, too, in one of your podcasts about like how you're like stepping and making sure that you're not, you're kind of blending into the woods and like the patterns of how you move. And I think it's just so exciting to be able to get in there and be like that true camouflage. It's not just like sitting in a stand and, I do that too as well. But going out there and running around and kind of being immersed and you just learn so much, you pick up on so much as opposed to just sitting and waiting. And I feel like there's a certain time in my life where I'm going to not be as mobile. And that's where maybe I'll go ahead and sit back a little bit more. But while I can now, it's like, it's time to move around.
yeah, absolutely do it while you can. And like I know you had asked about how I kind of got started and how I got into Scheels.
Hmm.
And just the core of it is really just that passion and enthusiasm for the outdoors. And from there it's like I didn't start at Scheels. I've been working at Scheels for 4 years now. I had a few jobs before that. I worked for a farm equipment dealer. I went to school and I went to school in Minneapolis and I got a taste of the big city lifestyle, and I found out very quickly that that was way too much concrete for me. So I moved back to Fargo, North Dakota, kind of get that little mix. It's like I got everything I need in town, but I can drive 10 minutes and I can get to the middle of nowhere basically.
Yep.
But so yeah, I started with this farm equipment company. I got a statistics degree, so I knew numbers really well. And so then I got to know like the CEO of the company through that. It was actually because of a trail camera picture of all things. So I'm sitting here doing like all my regular daily day-to-day jobs, inventory management and figuring out how to be more efficient with all that stuff. But my mind really is in the woods while I'm sitting in the office. And I worked uh, as a kind of a side job. I would work on putting in food plots for people, and so basically, you move into North Dakota. It's a fresh start. I don't have any access to land around. I know there's nice deer, but I don't like. I know I don't want to hunt public all the time. I want to be able to have some access to some stuff and like that. So I figured, okay, well, I've got equipment. I know how to put in food plots. Let's figure out some sort of deal where I can put in plots and then I can have access to land. So started out doing a plot for this guy, and it was actually Minnesota. But he reached out to me. He's like, "Yeah, I got a great spot, new property. It doesn't really have anything on it." And I thought to myself, well, I don't really need more hunting land in Minnesota, but I'm not really going to say no.
Right.
So I put in 2 food plots for this guy, and then I threw up a camera and was like, well, let's see what shows up. And about a month into having one of my cameras baking out on a food plot, I see like the guy checked the camera for me. He pulled the card, put it on his computer, and was like, "You will not believe what is on this camera." And I'm like, "Well, show me, send me a picture." So he sends me a picture, and there's this deer on it that I didn't think it was real. Like, biggest framed animal, biggest framed deer I'd ever seen in my life. I'm like, that is not my camera. But then, like, he sends me like 10 more pictures of it, and I'm looking, and I'm like, yeah, that's the food plot I put in. That's my camera stamp. Like, this deer's real. And I had nicknamed him Freak Nasty because I'd never seen a deer like that. I said he was a mainframe 10 pointer, 5x5, and he had a big kicker on one of his sides. And like, this deer from a mile away, because you'd see his rack from a mile away. And I became just absolutely obsessed with this deer. He ended up scoring 189 and 5/8. And I know that because he ended up getting shot by a neighbor with a 30-30 at 2 in the afternoon. And it was his first ever deer, and he had no idea how big it was. And I'm definitely not bitter about it. But yeah,
I'm
that
bitter
deer
too.
haunted my nightmares for a long time. And I got a camera picture of him the day before Halloween. And I had sat in that exact stand the day before, and he came out in broad daylight, 10 yards in front of my stand. So it was very rough. But anyways, to go back to, I got a little in the weeds there, but I got really excited about this deer.
Hmm.
But I had this deer posted all over my wall, and the owner of the company came by, and we started talking about hunting. And he said that, hey, I've got this property out in North Dakota where, like, obviously he's the CEO of a company, so he's got a lot of land. And he's like, I bring people for vendor hunts and stuff like that, but I don't have anybody to show around for like deer hunting stuff, because you get people that want to bow hunt. And he's like, yeah, you want to like kind of set some cameras out and set some stands and kind of get into this. And I'm thinking like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll call it lucked into it or whatever, but then I got, kind of got into this, and then I really started like filming things too. I created my own YouTube channel just to, kind of share my experiences and kind of promote it at the same time. And I really got into Midwest whitetail with Bill Winke at that same time, because I was good enough at my job where I would finish basically all of my stuff in a few hours, and I'd take a little break, and a new episode of Midwest Whitetail came out. I'd watch that, and then I just became fascinated with the whole recording your outdoor experiences thing. And so it really started getting into the video side of things and understanding, how to bring your camera in and like taking it out in the field and then learning from experiences and sharing all that stuff. And it just became super cool. That also turned into like becoming a part-time hunting guide out there too. So really got into just the whole outdoor experience and kind of putting properties together and learning how to kind of manage land and figure out deer patterns. And fast forward to now, like now I'm working with Scheels doing a lot of that similar stuff in the social space, where it's like I take all of these outdoor passions, and then I'm able to share all these experiences, the things that I've learned, the types of questions I can ask our store experts and our pro staff and stuff like that. And it's really turned into just like my goal is in the social media space here at Scheels is to, well, inform people of stuff that can help them, and just give people the drive and the passion to go out and experience these things themselves.
So your role there, you're basically the social media marketing expert, like specialist, right? Is that, and then you kind of How did you find yourself involved in like that role? Did they see some of your YouTube stuff and kind of, bring you in like that? Is this something you applied for? Is there some kind of divine intervention here? How did you end up in this role doing that and kind of continuing to further your love of the outdoors and kind of being able to share that on a new, spectrum in that sense?
Yeah, I do. You know, you could almost call it divine intervention because when I was working at the previous job I was talking about, it's basically this lodge and event center out next to all this land, and I knew somebody that worked previously in the farm machinery company, and he moved to Scheels and was like, "Hey, we want to film a pheasant hunting commercial, and we need a place to do this." So where you're at came to mind. So I was like, "Oh, absolutely! I will lay everything out. I'll get it all set up." So like, we work with Sick Manta, the video company, and Donnie Vincent, who basically turns outdoor experiences into an art form. So he's like, yeah, Donnie Vincent's going to be there. And like, once I heard that, I was like fanboying out. I'm like, oh, I need to meet this guy. I have so many questions. I want to hear so many stories, and I want to help them just make a commercial that is absolutely epic. I will do everything in my power to wait on them hand and foot, just get them there, and we'll make that happen. So, yeah, they decided that's the location for it. So I'm like lining up properties to do this and making sure like all the all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted so we can do everything properly. Finding pheasants for it was interesting because it's like, well, we have to find birds for this. Like one location we need to have them so they're flushing, and other locations like we'll just set them down and they'll release, and the dogs will go after them, stuff like that. So I had to figure out how to wrangle pheasants in a time where there wasn't a lot of pheasants that were really abundant or looking good. And then I had to figure out like legal places to store them, and they ended up like escaping at some point, and I had to take nets and chase after them. Like
Please
there's
tell me
one
there's some
part,
video of that.
oh, I wish, but I was the only one there.
Yeah.
So trying to wrangle these pheasants. So like I'm going like, okay, we're at the spot where we got to bring, I think they wanted like 35 birds or something like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll go get them. I got my crates to keep them. And I drive to the spot and I see three birds running around. And then I see another one on top of this grain bin. Like, I don't know how it got there, but it's like perched on top of this grain bin. And I'm like, oh my God, these are not the birds that we're trying to film. And of course they were. So like half, like probably 10 or 12 of them were still there. So I'm here with a net trying to like catch these birds. And it was just pandemonium. And then I remember the last one, the one that was on the top of the grain bin. It was just sitting hanging there. So like I look around and I see the ladder for the grain bin. And I'm like, I got the net in my one hand and I'm trying to go up and slowly sneak. And sure enough, I didn't catch that sucker. It was one nice swoop for where I figured what direction he was going to fly, and he flew into the net, and I ended up getting him. But so here they have like they wanted like 35 birds on this, so I have to drive back to the lodge where all these guys are at, figuring out how to tell them I only have 16 of them that I'm coming back with. And I was like, oh man, I was like ghostly white in the face. Like I've worked on a couple of projects with Donnie Vincent afterwards. And every time he sees me, he's like, I'll never forget how white you were when you came up and told us that you lost half of our birds in this shoot. But thankfully, we had just enough to come up with the right amount of footage, and it all worked out.
Wow, man. It finds a way, right?
Yes,
You deal with
absolutely.
what the
But
show must
anyway,
go
so
on.
yeah, so that was my first experience working with Scheels. And then you know, I started I wanted to experience new things. And so I started applying for jobs, and I was like, I want to work with Scheels. So I actually applied for three or four different positions. the first couple were in our e-commerce department. So I would be working on like analytics and things like that for our website. And that's kind of what I went to school for. So it just, for some reason, those didn't work out. But then a position opened for social media in at Scheels because one of our social media guy in the outdoor space moved on to e-commerce. So that like I met with the main guy in marketing, the head of marketing, and he's like, this position just opened up. It just fits you to a T. You know, like having that combination of love for the outdoors and being able to shoot video and having a eye for photography and having a statistics background to understand like how to target people. So it was just kind of a perfect combination. And I've been running with it ever since.
Well, it seems like the perfect fit for you, man. And it kind of like gets to have all of the different, avenues, like you mentioned, all put into one. So it's very serendipitous. That's
Yeah,
exciting for you, man.
there's so many people that come up to me and are like, dude, you have the dream job. And it's great. I absolutely love it. It's very demanding at the same time. You know, like obviously the stuff I post on social media is your highlight reel for stuff. It's like, oh, you're in the boat fishing, you're talking with people on a podcast about being in the Bassmaster Classic, and you got the coolest job. But like 95% of it, I'm sitting here in the office or I'm sitting in a meeting room. And it's like, those are the times that, like, I'm not going to go onto Instagram and take a picture of my screen and be like, oh yeah, I crushed that spreadsheet today.
Man, I excelled at Excel
Yeah,
today.
I
Yeah.
excelled at Excel. I like that line. That was a really good line. Um, so yeah, there's just and the new platforms because we're diving into so many different things. We've got, like what I handle is, like I started out with Facebook and Instagram, and then
Mhm.
it went Facebook and Instagram, and oh, we're going to launch a podcast. So basically, started a podcast platform. Hey, YouTube's the number two website in the whole world. We need to have a better presence on YouTube. So then I started taking on YouTube, and then all of a sudden TikTok was created, and we gotta reach the masses on TikTok because that's a new different way. And then now Instagram Threads has developed. So now all of a sudden I have an Instagram Threads profile and are starting to do stuff on there, and each one of them are different and require a decent amount of work. So it's like trying to jumble all of that stuff at the same time is super demanding. But then I got to keep telling myself at the same day I talk about hunting and fishing for a job. So sit back, think about this. It could be a lot worse. You could be looking at spreadsheets about farm equipment. So yeah, it's all in all, it's a great gig. My absolute favorite times are when I get to leave this office and go out and do in field work.
Sure.
That's the really fun stuff. That's the stuff where I can like take my passion, enthusiasm, and really translate it. You know, one project came to mind recently. It was we haven't released this yet. I don't know when our segment's going to release, but it'll probably be close to the same time. But it's a trail camera video. So we have we have all these certain videos that we want to put out with these certain topics. And I said, I'm in a lot of the planning meetings for this. So it's like, okay, hunting season's coming up. We want to talk about trail cameras. So okay, being Scheels, we have over 30 stores in I think 16 different states now. So wouldn't it be cool to do videos where we have four of our different cameras we want to talk about and ship them in places all over the country and get video on that? It's like the concept's super cool. So it's like, okay, but the planning that's required to make that work from a logistical standpoint is a lot more difficult than, hey, let's make this happen. This is a cool idea. So this project that was going to turn into all the four different states, four different people bringing in their content and hoping the content is good and mashing it up into something, it just became too daunting of a task. So I was like, hey, Mike, what should we do on this? And in my head, it's like, well, I haven't put out my cameras yet on my hunting properties. So let me take an afternoon or take a day and I will put out cameras in all these different spots, and I will record my experiences. I'll talk about the cameras. I'll talk about the setups so people can, who are looking for a trail camera, they'll, like they can get all the specs and why this camera is cool, why I think it's a great camera based on my experiences. And then I'll go out to my hunting properties and I'll set them up and I'll tell them why I put this camera in this spot. And then so it'll be a good combination of education and entertainment at the same time. Because I have to say, I got a little bit of dad humor in me. So they're not like super dry, boring videos. At least I don't think so, anyways, because I'm pretty good at laughing at myself, I guess. But so this trail camera video, we've got I'll spoil it a little bit. We got a spy point one, we got a Tacticam, we've got one of the new stealth cams. Those three are cellular ones, and then we've got a traditional Browning camera. We picked the Browning for the non-cellular because if you've used any Browning cameras, they are just rock solid, dependable, super easy to use.
Oh yeah,
And so
workhorses.
it's like, okay, my Spy Point one, the new Spy Point Flexes. They've Spy Point when they first got into the game with like the Link Micro cellular ones.
Mhm.
It's like they're a great budget cell camera. If you're a little bit tech savvy and understand how they work, they're great for you. If you are not tech savvy, they can be an absolute nightmare with like the firmware updates and the taking out a card to download stuff. Hopefully, the right stuff's on your card so it updates properly and works. And their customer service is, I wager to say Scheels customer service is better. Um, and but the new flexes, absolutely love them. Like all your updates, you press a button on the app after you download it. It's walked you through the whole process, and camera's great, trigger speed's great. Thing I love about Spy Point Flex is the pictures to the app are crystal clear, like super nice photos. So it's like, okay, I'm going to put this one on a field edge because I anticipate deer coming from longer distances away and I'm going to get good photo quality. And then if I need a little bit more, I'll download the HD one. So put that one out there. And then next one was a Tacticam. So that one I have a solar panel. So it's like I'm going to put this down in the thick, nasty stuff. I'm going to attach it to a solar panel, and I am never going to touch that camera again. So it's like, okay, that's a field edge one. Great story to tell. Back in the bedding area, cellular cam, solar panel. Great story to tell in the second one. Next one, I go to a different property, explain the situation, nice pinch point. This is why I like the stealth cam here. These are the attributes to it. And then the final one, the non-cellular one, my parents have like 30 acres right behind their house, and they've got a pond and they've got a 2 acre food plot like right on the other side of the lawn. So you're like mowed lawn, food plot, pond another 100 yards back. So it's like all these deer are so used to like normal human interactions and stuff. Like we got trail systems, we drive four wheelers, they're used to it. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I don't need a cellular camera for that. Like I can go visit my parents because they want to see my daughters anyways. And then I can go out and I can put out the camera, check the camera, refresh the mineral site, whatever. And just another even like added value to it that comes to like my outdoor experience and my experience as like a hunting guide, where it's like if you're going to put like mineral sites out, or if you're in a state where baiting is legal, deer have different attitudes and mentalities. And you get a big wary old buck, he might not come to that pile of corn, he might not come to that mineral site because like this is different from like my normal day-to-day stuff. It's like, I'm just going to hang back and observe. If you hang another camera another 40 feet on the side in an area that they can get a visual on this area, you might get a picture of a buck you had no idea lived there. So
Yep.
it's just a lot of that stuff. And I try and bring a lot of that into the videos I do and the content we put out.
Well, those are all super important things. And, I mean, I was kind of guilty of this and having this experience too when I first started putting out trail cams. learning about which directions to face and maybe not paying attention as much to when they might be there's in directions and things like that you pull them up and they're like, for best use do this. And because I have a bunch of pictures of like the sunrise or the sunset, and I was like, oh, okay, let's face it, north or south. All right, got it. And not eating as much battery up and having pictures of like nothing, or it's so backlit that you can't even tell what's in front of it. And just learning all those different things, or hey, this works really well at this spot to have an angle that's going down, and being able to kind of get close to the deer. There's so many different things that if you're just starting out, you're not gonna sometimes people don't want to have to take the time to make the mistakes in order to kind of get the best product at the end of it, where nowadays it's like you can just kind of tune in. I mean, I'm thinking about whenever we started out. I mean, the game trail cameras were this big. It looked like five
Yep.
fire extinguishers, and it was like I think the SD cards were like 2 MB, and it's like you get these pictures that were so grainy, and it looked like some Blair Witch Project thing in the background. Like, what is that animal? It's you couldn't tell. And but nowadays everything's so sharp, like you said too. You have the HD option. I've used a lot of those cameras that you talk about, and just incrementally every single year. I was actually testing out with Moultrie Mobile when they were sending out some stuff, and they had sent me a couple cameras to try out, doing some of their new video features and different sections on how much time they would have 15, 30-second, minute long. And it was just night and day difference for when growing up and when what we were using. And a lot of times I think people, there's a conversation that I saw recently online about like the idea of like fair chase, and is using game trail cameras kind of interfering in that kind of stuff too. But I just feel like it's just the more information you can have about what's out there and what's moving, you can learn while you're not in the field. And while we have jobs where we're sitting around computers, and they just being able to get as much information as you possibly can. And I love how you guys have created a bunch of videos to be able to help assist, uh, you know, current hunters, new hunters, and seasoned hunters as well, to be able to kind of learn a little bit more and be able to utilize their tools. And it seems like you guys do that with Scheels like all around. And I kind of wanted to maybe veer into your idea of like how you're doing that with resident experts and these different fields and in this type of gear in your podcast format. And how did that come about? And what number are you guys on now? You're like in the high 100s, right? I mean, you guys have been doing this for a little while. It's been pretty successful.
Yeah, I think we're on year three of that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, year three, because I kind of helped create the podcast. Basically, like there, people wanted to get a podcast going, but nobody like took the initiative to just like make it happen.
Uh-huh.
So I was probably a year into it, and podcasts came up, and I'm like, yeah, let's make it happen. So I talked to one of the creative media people. I'm like, what do we need for a podcast equipment wise? It's like, okay, you need a deck, you need, like to, record the whole stuff and connect all the things. You need the microphones, and you need the headsets, and got it into this whole kit that fits into a nice little Pelican case, so I can move it if I want to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because this is a little bit. I'd like to talk about this later, but we have these things called Scheels universities. So basically, it's like a training session for the associates, and we bring in like vendors and people that are in the industry, and it's like, oh, those are like hotbeds for content and for podcast episodes. So we need to be mobile a little bit. But anyway, so we got all this stuff, and it showed up, and they're like, here you go. And I was like, okay. Well, they showed me how to connect it. So it's like, okay, I know enough to be dangerous now. Now it's pretty much on me. So it's like we don't have like an outline or like storyboards or themes or anything. So it's like pretty much a blank slate. Mike, run with this. So it's like, okay, I'll just do a test with my buddy Jaden at the Fargo store. I know he's really good at fishing and especially jigging wraps. And jigging wraps is something that like I really wanted to get into. I fished with it a little bit, but I was not good at it at all. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a test run here with Jaden because it's something that I'm extremely interested in. I want to learn about. And like if I want to learn it, I'm sure there's other people out there that want to learn
Sure.
about this. So it's like I sat down with him, I grabbed a random conference room, and we just started talking. And I anticipated it to be just like a test. But then it just like clicked and went right away. So like, if anybody wants to listen to this, it's episode 1 and 2 with Jaden Thomas. Supposed to be a test, but this is our first podcast. And yeah, it was fascinating all the ways that he talked about fishing and how he got into fishing and jigging wraps. And I just learned so much from it. And I was like, well, we recorded this segment and I listened to it and I was like, well, it sounds a lot like all the other podcasts I listen to. So, I mean, why don't we just go with it? So
Upload.
then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we have episode 1, which actually became episode 1 and 2 because we didn't know how long our podcast we wanted to be. So I had like 50 minutes recorded. It's like, well, the people that were like, okay, let's actually do this podcast are like, well, let's do like 20-minute episodes. So I'm like, well, I recorded a 50-minute banger episode. So should we like just put out all 50 or like cut it in half or what do you want to do? So that's why it's episode 1 and 2. And it's just kind of like morphed into something that's really cool. Being at Scheels, I have access to, a lot of people, whether it's store associates that have a ton of knowledge in their space, or pro staff that do stuff at our stores, or vendor personalities, people from vendors. It's just the world is kind of our oyster in that in the outdoor space, and like pretty much anything outdoors related is fair game in that one. So it can be anything from hunting to fishing to trail cameras to long range shooting to outdoor cooking to camping to any of that sort of stuff. So it's not defined into like a single outdoor space like fishing. I feel like you could probably promote it a little bit better if we kind of like stayed in one lane and went with it. But at the same time, I like to tell different outdoor experiences. Some I'm more stronger suited in, know a lot more. Then I can like be a more valuable part of like the conversation to help people. In other ones, it's stuff where maybe I really don't know a lot. Like the cooking ones are great examples of that. Like we had this Scheels University is a barbecue university. It's strictly dedicated to learning about barbecue stuff and outdoor cooking. And it's like, well, I got a pellet grill at home and like I know how to make some burgers and throw a hot dog on there, but like I don't really know anything about this. So it's like I'm trying to do research to come up with like questions that make me seem semi-intelligent and but it really got me like fascinated into the outdoor cooking world too. And like my wife is a great cook, like so she caught on to it like right away. It was making really cool stuff. Um, One of them was a wild turkey recipe. So if anybody out that listens to this hunts wild turkey, that if they're not cooked properly, they're not the best tasting animal in the world. They can taste
Yep.
like shoe leather if
Yep.
they're not done properly. So it's like, okay, now that I've done these outdoor podcasts, I'm getting interest in it. I'm going to figure out how to like do some really cool turkey stuff. And my wife tried this bacon wrapped jalapeno cream cheese wild turkey, and she made it, and it was phenomenal. It was like, okay, I need to learn how to do this and how to put my own spin on it. And so it was like, okay, now I've completely entered the outdoor cooking world. I mean, it makes perfect sense because like I'm an outdoor guy and like I shoot a lot of deer and turkey and stuff like that, but my wife and my kids don't really like love it. So it's like, oh no, we're just gonna buy a pound of ground beef from the store. And I'm like, no, I got a freezer full of venison. I need to figure out a way to become really good at this. But so yeah, it really started with like the wild turkey and kind of branched from there. And what I've started to do is like, okay, you got to brine the turkey. You got to
Oh
make
yeah.
sure to soften it up, and then I started injecting it to kind of keep that moisture in there again, and then wrap it and bake it, keep that moisture in there even more. And that cream cheese spread is really the ticket in there. Yeah, you take your cream cheese and you dice up your jalapenos, put it in there, get a little zip to it. I like to use Me Church Holy Voodoo seasoning in there too. That really accentuates those flavors. And then you take because like a wild turkey breast isn't completely uniform either. So
Right.
like I learned that through trial and error. My first one, it's like, okay, the bigger part of it was delicious, but the other one was burnt to crap. So it's like, okay, now I learned how to fold that thinner spot and then toothpick it so then it's more uniform so I can get a better cook through it. And then it's like, okay, I'm getting a little bit better and a little bit better in each of these, all thanks to starting a podcast and we're talking about outdoor cooking. So it's amazing how um, being exposed to stuff that you might have a mild interest but don't really care about, then all of a sudden you become fascinated with it. And then you find yourself watching YouTube cooking shows at like 2 in the morning, and if people are curious about that wild turkey episode, we've launched a YouTube channel, What's Cooking at Scheels. And I have the recipe on there. It has me filming it. So
Oh,
you'll have to check that out.
I'll be tuning it in, man. I'll put some links down here for other people too. I mean,
Yeah, it's delicious.
that's
I did a bacon weave, like so you weave the bacon and then you wrap that. That's
uh-huh.
what you put the jalapeno cream cheese spread on. But anyways, I used 2 pounds of bacon on that sucker. So it it was good.
Well, it's I one of my favorites to kind of an introduction to wild turkey for people is a turkey cordon bleu. And when you're like kind of butterfly out the breast there, and you're layering it with all sorts of awesome cheeses and prosciutto and ham, and it's you can't really go wrong whenever you're putting in prosciutto and bacon and things, right? It's like it's going to be delicious, but I think the wild turkey flavor gets, it's like it's meshed in with everything else. And it's not a bad thing, but it's for someone, if you're just like, hey, have you ever had wild turkey before? They're gonna be like, this is delicious because it has all the goodness on it. But to be able um, to cook that the right way, I'm very guilty of overcooking before. I mean, I did one was we were trying to fry turkeys, and I had at Thanksgiving, I remember doing one, and just regular store bought, and then I think when I pulled mine up, it looked like this black concoction of just like plastic. I butchered that thing, man. It was very early in my career, and like paying attention to like temperature and things like that. I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
but that's like one of the things that I do now with one of my buddies, Matthew Mitchell. He's a co-host a lot with the podcast. Is we interview wild game chefs, and every fall, and it's kind of like you're talking about your podcast and kind of having it be it's if you had it focused, maybe there may be more success in certain realms, but I love the idea of being able to have what you guys do, and it's all realms, because there's like different seasons. Like for us during the hunting season, I'm doing a lot of stuff with these wild game chefs talking about wild game that they're going to be hunting in the field at that point in time. And as while I haven't done as much with people that are on the water, the idea of like being able to talk to somebody too about fishing and the seasonality of game and cooking, and that's something we want to get into more. But you can have a podcast year round about different animals that are hunting. It's different states have turkey seasons that are this long to this long, and you can kind of like fill up something all the time. So I feel like for an outdoorsman, there's always something for me to plug into with you guys in your podcast that is going to kind of be current, where I can learn kind of, concurrently, as far as maybe, it's fishing season. I can learn something from this, from that pro staff or hunting. So, while it may be vast, I think it kind of works in a lot of ways too for people to kind of stay in real time connection with what you guys are,
Yeah,
saying.
you're right. It's easier to stay relevant with that with new episodes. Yeah, because like right now we put out a lot of fishing content,
Mhm.
and then we're going to start diving into trail cam stuff, and then hunt preparation, and then hunting stories, and then after the hunting season's done, or like then we'll move into ice fishing because people get the itch to ice fish once that first cold snap comes.
Yeah.
And I'm super passionate about ice fishing too. I don't think we've talked about that at all in our introduction stuff, but I can go on for days on ice fishing. But then you can move into cooking and food preservation, and then you move into shed hunting, and then turkey hunting, and then all of a sudden you're back into fishing again, and then you
Mhm.
just run into a whole cycle. And you just mix in different topics and ideas along the way. And, the good thing about having a podcast that's been around for 3 years now, like all of these concepts that were done in episode 1 to 10 are still relevant today. I mean, granted, we might talk about like a couple of different products, or there's been some things that are now more innovative than others. Like I remember talking about like forward facing sonar in some of our first podcasts, or the lack of talking about forward facing sonar in some of the podcasts. And so now it's like, oh, now I can jump up to one of the newer episodes on that and learn all about that too. So yeah, it's super cool. And so, some of my favorite ones are some of the earlier episodes too. Like I remember we had Michael Waddell on one of them, and he was just he's so entertaining. I mean, obviously, like he's been doing Bone Collector and all that stuff for a long time, but just the professionalism and the knowledge from him, like we got into the weeds pretty good talking about trail camera strategies, and yeah, it's some really good stuff.
Is there any guest that you have on your like your wish list that you're like, I want to go and chat with them at any point in time?
Yeah, there's a few of them. There's one that we have tentatively marked to record in October with Ted Nugent. That's going to be super cool.
Uncle Ted.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. Um, and kind of how we initially got connected is a bucket list guy, and that's Steven Ranella. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I absolutely want to record one with him because he's just fascinating. I mean, like he's got his own series on Netflix, and he did a book tour recently at the Scheels,
Yep.
at like I think 8 different Scheels locations.
Yeah, and
So
like
it's like,
7 days in a row as well in different
yeah,
states.
just absolutely wild. I wanted so badly to get to the Eden Prairie one, but I just couldn't make it work in the schedule. I was like, oh God, I want to meet him. I want to pick his brain a little bit, but like he's going to meet 5,000 other people there too. I don't want to take out because I'm going to want like 3 hours of his time, and he's going to be there for like 5 hours.
Right.
So it's just not going to work. I need to just stay in my lane on that one. We can make it work another time, maybe do a virtual segment or something. But yeah, he's really high on the bucket list. Definitely want to have a session with him.
No, well, I look forward to checking out that session. We'll help will that to happen, right?
Yes. Yeah, maybe we could even do a combo one, all
Dude,
three
that'd
of
be
us
awesome.
even.
That'd be
That would
awesome.
be that'd be super cool. I am definitely not opposed to that.
That'd be fun, man. I've done a little bit of work with him. He is just such an amazing guy. His mind, like he just remembers everything. Like he'll pull facts that like he might have heard 20 years ago. And is people know him for the Netflix stuff, but like him as a writer, like his The Scavenger's Guide to Haute Cuisine, like his book, that one, like that was my buddy was like, hey, you got to read this, and I read it in like 2 days, and I just remember like thinking about how amazing of a writer he was. And then I got into the Buffalo book, and so kind of like as I was learning about his Netflix and everything he was doing there, and kind of jumping into the podcast early on, like just his writing and just the wealth of information that he has and shares, and a sense of humor. I was obviously kind of blown away by how entertaining and educational all of that was. And yeah, I think he'd be a great guest all around. It's someone that I've worked with a lot of people who work with him, and you kind of made mention of this earlier, kind of made me think about it when you were talking about going and putting food plots, and then kind of being able to get hunting and stuff too. There's a guy, Doug Duran, who maybe you've they mentioned him on the Meat Eater podcast, and he's been on the show as well. But he has a company called Sharing the Land, where he brings land owners and land access seekers together to kind of form these collaborative groups to like leave the property better than they found it. And kind of if like a landowner needs someone to put in food plots, and you've got that skill, you come over there, and then maybe you get to hunt that as a return. And just kind of I love that kind of unity and stuff too. So I've talked to him. He's always had fun stories about his time with Steve, and it seems like a good group of people to be working with. That's a fun group over
Yeah.
there at Meat Eater.
Oh, I bet. Absolutely. And like we talked about bucket list stuff, and there's obviously some really cool people that I'd want to interview. But another nice thing about the Scheels podcast is like being able to interview our associate experts, the
Hmm.
ones that are on the sales floor, the ones that are sitting in the fishing department all day, and then as soon as like 5 o'clock hits and they're out, they're going and they're grabbing their fishing gear and their
Yep.
boat and trying to catch the evening bite, and just living and breathing that sort of craft. And those are some of the most enjoyable ones too, because it's like, okay, this person is not well known, but they have so much expertise. It's very cool to bring that to light. And from a Shields perspective too, that's super cool because like people don't just like immediately know that. Like they walk to a sporting goods store and they have something in mind that they need. And it's like, okay, I found what I want and I'll be out. Like if you go to a Shield store, there's a really good chance that somebody's going to walk up to you and ask what you need and then start a conversation with you. And next thing you know, you're sharing hunting stories and you're figuring out, oh, maybe I didn't exactly want this medium action rod. I need like a medium fast power so it can effectively put the right type of jigging cadence on my jigging wrap. Or I just got out of a meeting before this where I was talking with one of the developers of our Shields Outfitters rods, and he was talking about this new one that we have coming out next year. That's more of like a moderate action and he gave me the reasoning behind like why you would want to use this one for your jigging wraps with this type of line type and the way that the lure is sort of evolving a little bit. And it's like, it just got me really like thinking outside the box on this and like, okay, this is how I can improve on that. But like we have those people at every single one of our stores that like in basically every department of our stores, which is super cool. Just the amount of knowledge that they're ready and willing to share. It's like, okay, we obviously want to sell you this rod, but we want to give you the absolute best possible experience with all the knowledge that we have curated throughout our experience, learning about this piece of equipment and then testing this piece of equipment in the field so I can have my personal endorsement and tell you things that you may not know about it to help you become more successful and have a more enjoyable time outdoors.
Well, that's huge, man, because there's a lot of different places that are sporting goods stores where it's like maybe the item for sale is the thing they may be pushing. That's not necessarily the experience when you walk into Scheels. And I learned this when I walked into the Colony store during Stephen Rilla's book tour there when I went to go say hi to him. And I hadn't been to a Scheels before. Obviously, you guys got the one in Texas there, now, and I'm sure there'll probably be more to grow in the future. But that store, one, it's so large. I mean, they check your passport when you go from one end to the other. It's a big store, y'all. It's awesome, and it's got a Ferris wheel in the middle. It's got a mountain with all these taxidermy. I mean, it is a phenomenal experience. But whenever you're walking around, associates coming up to you, over when we were over near the firearms, hey, what exactly you guys looking for together? And my buddy Matt and I were there. We're just kind of looking at some stuff. They had some Sequence Precisions, like a rack of all these amazing under glass, like, amazing badass rifles. And we were just kind of talking, and I just saw how helpful everyone was. But like you had said too, the expert level of knowledge that comes from that, I know when I'm talking to somebody there, it's very easy to tell that somebody knows exactly what they're talking about. They're not just blowing smoke. I go to these other outdoor stores. There's a bunch here in Texas, and I'm not going to throw any names under the bus, but you go to ask about some information. That person, they're just clocking in and getting a paycheck. They might not even really work in the outdoors, but they've just been put into that section because they need someone to fill a space or work a counter. And that's not what you're looking for when you're getting into that outdoor experience. You want someone who knows what's up, who can be able to kind of steer you in the right direction. And maybe they'll admit, I might not know exactly this. Let me call over Johnny. Maybe he'll be the person who will tell you, and getting you what you need, not what you think you want. So there's something
Mm-hmm.
about that Shields experience and that I really feel is kind of catered to that customer experience in a way that leaves everybody with what they need and what they want, and all in one. And that experience is something else, man. So I really like how they've hired folks who really know what they're getting into. And I'm sure there's a lot of training that goes on behind the scenes. Like you're saying, you guys are talking about something that will be coming out a year from now, and you guys are now chatting about this to be able to kind of get all educated and informed. So that's a
Yeah.
well run machine there.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I have a pretty good story about the Texas store. My first and only time I've been there. I hope to be there plenty of times in the future, but the first time I've been able to, it was this spring. I think it was either in March or April. No, it was earlier than that. It was the very beginning of March. And so I'm in this meeting with our creative media team, and it's like, okay, we have this Southern Fishing University. We've got Fishing University. There's two of them. There's a northern one and a southern one. Now that we've expanded across the United States with that footprint. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, the northern one is focused on walleye. The southern one is focused on bass. So we want to film all this content. And then to get it at the beginning of March, it's like, okay, we have this and we can have it edited to put out when we want to start talking about fishing. So, hey, Mike, do you want to go to Texas to go film bass fishing videos? And you don't have to ask me twice. Yep, I'm gonna make that happen. So we get down there and we fly in, and the first stop is the Texas store. So it's like to go get our stuff because we don't want to like ship all the stuff there. We'll just
Right.
stop at Texas and then we'll pick up the stuff that we want to promote, and then we'll go to the lake and stuff. We had a boat that we rented down there, like Airbnb style. We pretty much Airbnb'd a boat down there in a truck. So we picked up the truck, we pick up the boat, we go to Scheels, and I get into the parking lot of the store and I look up at it and I'm like, what is this? Like obviously I know it's Scheels, but like I've never seen anything this size. Like I'm used to the Fargo store, which is a great store. It
Sure.
has basically everything I need. But this is like four Fargo stores. Like I'm just my eyes are like as big as saucers, and I'm like, all right, I got to go in here. And then you get in and you walk under like the aquarium,
Oh
and
yeah.
then yeah, you get in there, you see the animal wall, and then we get up to the fishing shop, and the fishing shop is like 10 times bigger than anything I've ever seen. And it's all got all these funky, fancy baits because they're all into like like bass is so prevalent down there, and like obviously there's a lot of bass fishing going on up here too, but like not to that level.
Yeah.
So like I'm looking at all this stuff, and then I run into the expert at the Texas store that we're going to be filming with, pick his brain a little bit, get all this information, and yeah, it was just crazy to see all that. So we ended up buying like 15 grand worth of fishing gear and for this video shoot. And it's like I look at that bill and it's just, well, I wish I could do this in my everyday life, but
Sure.
it's super cool to experience. But the main point I was getting at is like it was supposed to be cold, and like I didn't I didn't pack properly. So I'm like, I have most of my like core gear, but I was an idiot and forgot my gloves. I forgot to pack my gloves. So I wanted like a good pair of what I really wanted was like this light to midweight pair of Sitka gloves that I can that I can use it for this week, and then I can go and I can use it during like turkey season because I've got holes in all of mine because I've used them for the past 4 or 5 years. Like that pair of Sitka gloves is just my favorite. Like
Well,
I
it's lucky,
even
right? It has some
yeah,
experience in it. You don't want to
yeah,
just throw it to the
exactly. It's
side.
just like it fits perfect. I want that pair of gloves. Like so I'm looking around trying to find them and I can't. And then I go to an associate and he starts asking me about them and he hands me like 5 different pairs of gloves that are like very similar. Would have been great. But it's like I kind of have it in my mind like I want that one because I want to use they're my 4 to 5 year pair of favorite gloves.
Yep.
Like I want those.
Mm-hmm.
So like I ended up not finding that specific pair. And I was like, whatever. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I can suck it up a little bit. I don't actually need gloves, anyways. So I'm going down. We're checking out all this stuff. Anyways, the associate that helped me out, he went through the whole store, tracked me down, found me at the customer service spot with with two other pairs of gloves. He's like, "Oh, I think these will be the perfect ones for you for your application." And I, it was just amazing. Like, you're willing to go that sort of effort for one person to make sure that they have an enjoyable experience. It's like that hit me deep. It hit me a little deeper that I didn't buy his gloves because I had a pair of gloves that I wanted and I had my mind set. But the appreciation, like,
Sure.
kudos to you, dude. That was super cool. And yeah, that filming session was very cool because we got to, like, work with some of the associates, and we also had our Bassmaster guys, Josh Douglas and Pat Schlopper, down there too. So I got to get in a boat with them. They're like $200,000 all decked out bass boats, and have conversations with them and learn about all these tips and stuff. Because, like, I'm not a main bass guy. Like, I'm a walleye guy at heart, but, like, I've started to become more fascinated with bass fishing because, like, just the way you kind of go after them. You're like chucking baits under docks and throwing frogs on top of lily pads. It's fun.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up fishing walleye with like a spinner and a bottom bouncer, a Lindy rig, and you just kind of drift over an area, and like, you start feeling that nibble, and you have to like release tension a little bit to make sure they don't feel it. It's like, I love walleye fishing and how, like, my parents brought me and introduced me to it, but at the same time, it's kind of boring. It's like, I've gotten into like the more exciting types of fishing, like really going after them with like live sonar and using like sort of bass baits for walleyes. Like, I like to throw a chatterbait for walleye now on weed edges, and like, it's just more fun. And bass fishing is just, it's so fun. I've really gotten into paddleboard bass fishing, like stand up paddleboard bass fishing, because like, I've got two kids, and my wife's parents live on a lake. So it's like, okay, I have a boat sitting there. All I got to do is press a button and go fish, and it's staring at me this whole time. But I have all these dad duties, so I never actually like get to go into the boat. But like, my 3-year old, she'll nap, and then all of a sudden I can take the paddleboard out, and I can go along all the docks and all the weed lines and the lily pads, and I can spend 45 minutes bass fishing on a stand up paddleboard, and I can get my fishing fix in,
Yep.
and then I don't have to like play the angry mommy game for ditching out on the family and going fishing all day and coming back. Like, I can kind of get the best of both worlds with that. I can still be like the good dad that's helpful and still get my fishing fix in at the same time. And I don't I don't know if you've ever tried paddleboard bass fishing, or even being on a stand up
I
paddleboard,
hadn't done
but
the fishing part of it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a great workout. Like, obviously, stand up paddleboard is a good workout, but like, when you're having the balance to like chuck a bait caster and fight a fish while you're on the stand up paddleboard, then that turns like pretty interesting. And especially if you get one that's like maybe like 4 pounds or bigger, the fish will literally like pull you around too. So you have to like hang on for dear life while you're doing that. So yeah, it's pretty intense, and it's super fun, and I recommend giving it a shot.
It's like you're gonna be doing some bass surfing, man. You're gonna be I
Yeah,
can just see.
basically.
Well,
I was
go ahead.
at one point I want to try paddleboard muskie fishing. Hook into like a 45, 50-inch muskie on a paddleboard. Like, that one would literally pull you around the whole lake.
Yeah, make its own wakes as you're going too. You're gonna be catching some air. You gotta video that one, man. Throw a GoPro on the back of your paddleboard.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I enjoy GoPros. Like, I kind of started with GoPros a lot. You just get so many cool angles and things like that. I went on a bear hunt, and I put a GoPro on the bait site, and I had a bear come in and like look at the camera and fog it up, and just getting all those different angles is just super cool. Um,
Big
yeah,
time.
I, I've also had some negative experiences with GoPros, like for the for the people that watch this audio only, you won't be able to see this, but I'm going to show you something right here. I got as like a little trophy here. So this is my GoPro from last year, from Archery University, and as you can see, I have an arrow shaft in it right now. You can see that I kind of shot my GoPro. I was for the sake of content. So basically, what I was doing is I wanted to do a slow motion shot with the arrow coming in and hitting right above it,
Uh-huh.
and I got a little too aggressive with it. It was my third shot. The first two, like I shot the first one and it was like a foot above it. And I was like, okay, I
I
can
can go
get a little
lower. Yep.
closer. Yeah. So I shoot my second shot and that's at about like 7 or 8 inches from the GoPro. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I feel real good. And my third one, I shot my camera. Yep. So if you go onto our TikTok page, you can see it because like it got the footage from the beginning, and then as soon as I hit the camera, it obviously went to went to crap. But it like hit the lens and it made it all like cloudy and stuff. So you can still get like a little bit of audio from it too. And thankfully the footage like it was still recording. I didn't hit like the guts of the GoPro, so it didn't just like immediately crash. So I got to keep the footage. Yeah, but my reaction, like one of the associates that was part of the university was there, and he turned the video on right away at me walking up to the camera and looking at it. And I'm like, yeah,
We're gonna need a little bit more budget for this shoot, guys. Gotta
yeah.
replace this.
So that was interesting telling my boss about that because like he texted me. He's like, "Hey, how'd the footage and how did everything go?" And I'm like, "I have some incredible, fantastic footage. Everything is great, except I kind of shot my GoPro." And he kind of laughed it off. So everything was okay. We had two of them, so I could film the rest of my stuff with the other GoPro and the other camera. So it's like not the end of the world, but yeah, I didn't feel like the coolest person in the world after shooting my camera.
Hey man, you it's a sacrifice. You wanted the extreme close-up shot and you got it.
Yes, I did. I got it all right. I got it a little too good.
You'll have to send me that video if you have it. I can throw it here in the podcast for people to see it. It's I was chatting with Brent Reeves, who's he's part of the Meat Eater family. He has This Country Life podcast, and we were talking about a bear hunting story. We had a GoPro, and he's like, "I'm going to send you this video. I hadn't released it yet, and it was actually the bear knocked the GoPro down and then was like chomping at the camera." So it's like this, it's some really cool footage of, this bear trying to eat the GoPro and finally like spitting it out, but it just landed perfectly. It like knocked it off the ground. It was like facing up and the bear looking down. I was like, you can't really get that with any other experience, another, some type of small camera, GoPro or something like it, man. I mean, when I was first doing outdoor filming, I remember, having the huge camera, back in like the late 90s and stuff now. And the fact that you can have something so small and put it at whatever angle you want, have multiple ones running, it's, the technology and the the evolution thereof of video world is just it's mind-boggling seeing,
Oh,
knowing what it came from to where it is now.
oh, absolutely, 100%. Like when I started filming my experiences, I had kind of a handy cam, just a smaller one. It's shot in 1080,
Hmm.
so it was like okay, that's enough to like kind of get started at it. But then I started like reaching out to outdoor, like regional outdoor hunting shows and stuff. And it's like, oh, I want to film with you and stuff. And there was this one that kind of took me on and I started filming with the guys and they like the cameras they gave and put out. It's like, oh man, this is difficult. Like there's a lot of gear you got to pack out and like just trying to figure out a system to like get everything in your pack to be mobile at the same time. It's like I could tell some pretty good stories on that, just about like efficiency and things like finding the right camera arm and like finding the right camera to use for a second camera angle because you want to get those cool shots and things like that. But nowadays you can do a lot of it on just like your phone or on one of those like point of view tacticams, and you just
Sure.
like press a button and you get everything.
Yeah.
So it's like it's become a lot easier to film really cool stuff nowadays, but at the same time to really like take it to the next level, you still have to use a lot of those a lot of those better equipment, like the red cameras and things like that. Like I see some of the people out, like I don't know if you follow like Bowmar bow hunting
Hmm.
and things like that. Those $200,000 cameras that they put out that they shoot in 8K or 16K super slow mo or whatever. Like I see some of their shots. Like, did you see the one they put out with the slow motion turkey decap broadheads?
Yes.
That is just wild. Like you see the arrow coming in, like slow rotating, and then
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
head.
it's not quite for the faint of heart if you haven't seen that and want to watch it. So just like give that warning right now. But
Sure,
in
sure.
terms of like how epic the footage is, it's just like it's nuts what you
Oh,
can do nowadays.
I remember sending that off to a friend, and then like by the time that I had like just forwarded on Instagram, three other people had like sent me that when it first came out. It's like they're like, "You should see this." I'm like, "Yeah, I saw that. It's amazing." But like, yeah, man, it just blows me away about how, I mean, just where we are now. Just being able to like look back. I was trying to find there was a video I took of a badger back in like the late '90s with a really decent camera at the time, and just like it looks like it was shot on like a little kid's like tiny cell phone that you give somebody to play with. I mean, just comparatively now, and it makes creating content and sharing it so much better. And I love that aspect too. It's like you don't have to be a pro to be able to have some pro type gear. And I think that goes across the board in a lot of different ways. And it's seeing the rifles now that are guaranteed to all shoot, one MOA, at, three shots and like that's the technology and the ability to have stuff. Cause I remember, before it's like, you as a kid you can shoot a pie plate at 100 yards, people are like, oh, you're good to go. And now it's like, no, man, if I'm not making a little tiny hole with three shots, it's like you can get that same kind of accuracy out of a factory rifle. It's like it's just some
Mm-hmm.
incredible changes just in every level of the industry. So I'd like.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I think a really great example of that is like the advancements of technology in fishing electronics. Like it's
Yeah.
absolutely unreal what they can do nowadays. Because it's like when the first fish finder came out, it's like, oh, that's cheating, that's going to wreck the fishery. And then you come out with side scan and it's like, oh, now you can see everything, you're going to wreck the fishery. And then when they come out with like live sonar, that's it potentially can wreck the fishery. Like I've seen a lot of stuff like that. Now it turns into like we have so much advancements in technology nowadays. You have to teach the respect portion of it. You need to respect your fishery, respect your hunting area because it's reached levels of efficiency now that were previously unheard of.
That's a good point, man. And that's I love talking. There's a guy named Michael Sabbath that I do some work with, and he talks a lot about hunting ethics and educational and kind of the information that you have to kind of come to the table with. And he works a lot with like hunter ed instructors and kind of teaching them what to teach or how to teach, and the kind of the threads of information you need to kind of the morals that go along with being an outdoorsman, and ideas of fair chase or whatever it is. But it's like what you bring to the table and what you're teaching, because those are some important tenets to being outdoors, is making sure that it's not just take, because most hunters out there, whether they're aware of it or not, you're contributing to the conservation pool, with Pittman Robertson, and different things there too. But there's so much that we have to be, I think, all individual good, representation and spokesman for our lifestyle, and it's like we talked about the turkey video. You show someone who is, never been hunting before, if you show them a decapitation turkey video, they might be like, oh my gosh, like, you guys are savages. It's like, well, no, that was a clean shot. Like that was ethically, that was a really good shot that you just saw, but it's hard to, convey that to them. But I think being able to talk about the different types of things like that we can bring to the outdoors, and making sure that we're not just take and that we're giving back. And that's important, man. And I think sometimes people miss that when they think about hunters, because I mean, I think we're what, 5 to 6% of the population, right? It's like
Hmm.
we're a strong minority, but a lot of people, it's like, I think there's like 80 something percent. The Outdoor Stewards Conservation Foundation did a study not too long back, and I think it was like saying it was like 80% of people are fine, or 88% with hunters, but it's like you get to like trophy hunting and that number drops way low. And it's not, it's how we kind of give ourselves off as hunters in the outdoor world. It's important. So now we have all the awesome, ability to have, our phone or different technology to have cool creative content. But I think it's important that we teach about what we need to show and how we show it, as well.
Yep, absolutely. Just that kind of combination of like inspiring people to try it and to have those experiences, but at the same time teach about respecting the resources.
Yep.
Because like when you think about it, like you said, like 5% of the population is hunters, but I don't know the exact statistic, but it's somewhere around like 70% of the revenue generated is from your license sales and donations to Pheasants Forever and Ducks Unlimited and wildlife national parks and things like that. So yes, we are taking from the resource, but we're giving back at an exponentially higher rate than we're taking.
Yeah, and more than those who may be, kind of looking down at hunters, the anti-hunting group. It's like, yeah, but all those animals you saw out on your state park, or there's a reason, that they've actually been able to, that area was out hunted, many years ago, or maybe this native, bird wasn't there. The relocation of animals, and it's incredible what has been done in the outdoors, and that hunting industry, and how there's animals here today in Texas that they were gone, and they had to be reintroduced. So it's I think there's so much of a history of that people don't realize, and it's fine. But I love learning about kind of the history of hunting, and how this country has been so rich in wildlife, and also what we need to do to protect it and kind of keep that for that future generation. I've worked with a lot of Native American Indians, and especially elders, and like that idea too is like, what can you do now today to be able to benefit the seventh generation? And I always kind of think about that too. And I think there's a lot of responsibility if you're going to be a hunter, if you're going to have that be a part of your day-to-day operations, or seasonally, about what you can do to make sure that you're preserving that, so that your great grandchildren can also have that same game to appreciate, look at, photograph, video, hunt if they want, but just have it be there as a mainstay for that landscape.
Yeah, I find myself thinking about that a lot more now. Especially since I've become a dad. So I've got a 3-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old daughter, and it's just like, how do I introduce them to the outdoors? How do I get them excited and share that same passion that I have? Like, I don't expect them to become the absolute crazy whitetail nut that I am, but like if you can go out and enjoy nature and maybe, go out on a hunt or a fishing trip with me and we can spend some quality time together in the outdoors, not in front of a screen, like that's all I want. And like I've started doing that quite a bit too, like just trying to introduce my kids to the outdoors. Like my 7-year-old daughter Mia, like she was very into it right away. And then she's kind of morphed a little bit more into that girly girl getting pretty kind of thing, because like they're the only two daughters on my wife's side where we have our like our lake place and stuff. Like they're just super tight knit. She's
Mm-hmm.
got two other sisters, they each have 3 kids, but they're all boys. So like they they just pamper our two
Right.
daughters. Like there's so many dresses and Barbies and jewelry and all that. Like I can't compete with that. I'm just one dude.
Yeah.
I can't do that. So, but I want to keep them all excited about it. But like my 7-year-old, I've taken her out hunting a couple of times. I took her out turkey hunting once, and she absolutely loved that. We got up, we went to grandma's house, and we set up the blind, and I put her in like a black coat and brought her little blankie out there and her teddy bear. So she's hanging out with her teddy bear in the blind with dad. We actually had a bunch of turkeys come in and they gobbled their faces off like right in front of us. And dad rushed his shot and whiffed it. But she still came back and was like, "Oh, it's okay. I still love you. You did a great shot." And I was like, "Oh, this is like one of the most heartwarming experiences ever, where normally I would have been like cussing
Devastated.
and
Yeah,
screaming and
sure.
devastated."
Not
So
dad
that
mode.
was just that was a super cool experience. But yeah, throughout her like gymnastics and cheerleading and all of this pampering from her aunties, has become a little less interested in the outdoors, but there's still plenty of time for that. She still likes it, likes being outside. But the 3-year-old, on the other hand, like I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure she's going to be a tomboy. She's like a compact tornado, and yeah, she sharpied our whole upstairs with purple Sharpie, and then she'll be the cutest girl in the entire world and love everything about that. Like when I'd bring them back from daycare and I'd walk in our garage, I have a wall of deer mounts, and she's like, "Buck, buck, turkey." And it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna get into this stuff. And she's finally like old enough that she can understand like fishing and do it. And there's like billions and billions of these like 3 to 4 inch perch and sunfish on the edge of our dock. And like that's the perfect thing to get kids into it, like fishing right away, is just throw it out there, you wait 3 seconds and you reel it in. Like,
Hmm.
and she loves that. Like absolutely loves it. Daddy, let's go fishing. Daddy, let's go fishing.
Oh,
I'm gonna buy you so much fishing and hunting gear. We're not even have room for it. I'm gonna have to build another shed from the shed that I just built to put our other equipment, like lawnmowers and stuff. It's going to be like a hunting shed, you know.
she'll be like
So
the
I'm
youngest
excited.
sponsored Scheels, like all around outdoors woman that's ever existed. You got to talk to bosses about that. Be like, you got all the gear. Maybe they can build the shed for you, right?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, my oldest daughter, the 7-year-old, was actually on a Shields Instagram reel that we put out. It was going to buy a fishing kit. So like just gonna get all set up for everything you need for a kid to go fishing. And she's like, "Let's go get a fishing kit. Come on." And then she's like, "Can I do a cartwheel into the store?" So obviously she took her gymnastics and did a little cartwheel to get into the store. And now like all my friends that watch the video is like, "Hey, all the videos you do, I want to see a cartwheel to start it now." So
And
got that
not
started.
just
But
her, they want you to do it too now,
no,
right?
yeah,
Is
they
that
want me to do a cartwheel in every video that I put out on the pages now. So
so why did we not start our podcast out with your amazing car wheel? Next time, next time.
yeah, next time I just don't quite have enough area in here to set it up. So next one, since you've requested it, I can do a cartwheel. It's not as clean as my daughter's, but
There's
I
room
could
to
still get her
grow.
done.
There's room to
Yeah,
grow.
yeah, I'll have some time to practice.
There you go. You're
Uh,
like that's going to be amazing. Well, no, it's that you can't really have a better introduction into a store than a cartwheel. I think that's kind of the best way to get
yeah,
in.
I mean, it's the best one that I've seen so far, anyways.
That's awesome. So let's just chat a little bit about what are some of the things that you're working on now. I mean, I know we're in the heat of summer here right now, but it feels like the hunting season is upon us. What do you kind of got going on with the content that you're helping create and push there with Shields right now? Getting us all excited. Every single day I'm like looking at game trail cameras and the bucks in velvet, and I'm just like, I'm waiting, I'm counting down those moments there. So what are some things you can kind of maybe tease and dangle in front of us that's coming down the pike that you guys are working on? What are we going to be tuning into soon over at the Shields Outdoor Podcast? Kind of lay it on me. What's on the horizon here?
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you a taste of stuff that like we just put out, and then things that we're working on too. So, and kind of a little caveat to that too, it's like we're also doing things like figuring out how to shoot content for our 2024 Scheels Outfitters fishing rod lineup. Like I just, I was in a meeting before this where we were talking about logistics and who we're going to have, like talking about the products and who we're going to have like filming it, the location, stuff like that. So that's the sort of stuff that like we're already working on content for next summer and stuff like that. So it's always like, that's kind of like it's a little bit difficult balancing that because it's like you want to talk about content that's relevant right now, but you need to produce content when you have the availability to do it so it can be ready to deploy like when you want to talk about it. So
Sure.
a lot of the stuff will tend to like get shot in advance, but then there's other things that you just need to be in the moment for. So cool thing about like I'll just talk about the fishing one a little bit more before we dive into
Yeah,
the
yeah,
hunting because
yeah.
obviously like we're gonna have a lot of hunting content coming out.
Sure.
Fall fishing is good too. We'll have a lot of fall fishing tips on like our social channels. Like we talk about the podcast a decent amount here, but yeah, like I run all the outdoor social channels, whether it's YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or Threads, any of that stuff, and you have to have like different types of content for different platforms to keep that person engaged. So yeah, you're looking at me
It's
like,
a
yeah, that
lot
is
to
a
juggle,
lot.
man.
It is a lot to juggle. Yeah, especially when you're trying to put out content that's relevant now and stuff that'll be relevant like next summer. But
Yeah.
I
And
digress.
when do you have time to practice your car wheels, man?
I don't know. I got to do it in between takes or something
While
like
something's
that.
uploading. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But so like the fishing one, we were talking in there like, okay, we want to highlight this rod, and here's the situation for it. We got the right expert for it, and we also want to talk about travel rods. Teaser alert: we're gonna come out with some cool travel rods next year. Um, but
Awesome.
anyways, it's like, oh, how do we talk about those? Like, hey, we got to have somebody. We got to find a kid and like put it on his backpack or use it as a backpack while you're biking out to the river or like you're in your 1989 Chevy Celebrity driving to your Honey Hole River spot. Like that's the kind of vibe we want to put out for that. And then the other ones we want to have more of like a professional, like nice boat vibe or like normal what the normal customer would want to fish in or something
Mhm.
like that. So it's like figuring out how to do that in ways that we want to convey the message of how cool this product is and how it's going to be helpful, but how do we get people excited about it at the same time too? So it's like all that stuff's kind of working in the background. But for like content coming out in the near future, we've done a lot of stuff with the early portion of hunting, whether it's like your early season elk stuff or your patterning deer right now with trail camera stuff or figuring out things like the hodag licking branch to kind of get them to your camera in the right spot so you have some cool pictures and videos. So we've shot a decent amount of trail camera stuff. Like I talked about that before.
Mhm.
That was like a pre-4th of July project that I worked on that's going to come out within the next maybe a couple of weeks or depending on when this releases, maybe it's out there. Hopefully it is
Yeah.
because I like it. It was a fun segment. But we're doing other stuff like talking about our bow lineup. So we shoot, like the top bow from each brand and give our opinions on it. Like this is what I really like about it. I love the solid back wall, the draw cycle, how smooth and quiet it is. And just kind of get some interesting shots and angles of that. Shooting some stuff in the store with our experts, having them walk through all of that stuff, show that hey, you can go get a bow at Scheels, you can shoot it in our range, you can test it out, see if you like it. And side note on this one, like that's one thing I highly recommend. Like if you're not just like 100% brand loyal, I need to have this. Like I recommend shooting all the bows out there. Like everyone has a different hunting style or different needs and things like that. And you don't really know or are able to find the perfect bow or other piece of equipment unless you like test it out and shoot it. It's like I remember the first time that I was able to afford a really nice bow, and I'm like, I'm going all out. I'm gonna like I'm gonna apply and get a Scheels card, and I'm gonna max that sucker out. This was pre job, pre working at Scheels. And so I went to Scheels, and I'd watched so many YouTube videos on this bow, this is why I like it. But like being able to go into the store and be like, hey, I'm gonna buy a bow, but I need to know what fits me and fits my goals. So it's like, okay, I went out and I shot all the different brands. Like I shot a Matthews that year, liked it, didn't love the draw cycle, didn't love the size. And so I was like, that one's not quite for me. It's a great bow, but it's not for my application. So then I went and I picked up the Hoyt, and I shot that one and was like, yeah, I really like it, but it's still like, okay, I could see myself shooting animals with that. And then I picked up a Bowtech. I picked up a Bowtech Destroyer 350. So that's how far back we're dated on this story. And I shot it, and my first expression was just, whoa, yeah, this is my bow. Like, this is the one I want. So, but like afterwards now, I've moved up to, I've probably got like maybe four or so different bows after that one, and they've been different brands. Like the next one that gave me that feeling was a Hoyt Carbon Element, and
Mm-hmm.
then after that, it was the Matthews VXR, and it's the same time. It's like they fit me, and they just make me feel excited to go out and go hunting with this one. So, and that's just a great thing about Scheels, is being able to like go out and test them, and all the associates are willing to spend the time with you to get you into what's gonna fulfill your needs. And like my hunting needs have evolved throughout the years too.
Sure.
Like so it's like I want a bow that like because when I bought that Destroyer 350, I was like, I want the fastest bow on the market because I'm going out west and I want to be able to shoot 80 yards. And it's like, okay, that's great. So then, like, I didn't have an elk hunting trip planned, and I wanted a new bow. I want something that's a little more forgiving. I want something that's carbon, so it's not going to be freezing to my finger when I touch it and it's -12 in Minnesota on a December hunt. So I found like the carbon element was the perfect one for me. I want to hunt out west, and I want to hunt whitetail. And then I found that Matthews VXR was perfect for me. So it's like it's really cool with the evolution of that sort of stuff. So
Absolutely.
that's a lot of like what we try and translate into like what we're putting out for content. We realize that this bow is not perfect for everybody, so we're going to show all of them and explain why it's a good bow for maybe this certain situation of hunting. So then you can make a little bit more informed decision. But come to your local store and shoot it. Like it nothing's perfect until it gets into your hand and you fire off that first shot and you're blown away, you
Yeah.
know?
That's
So,
that's that's key, man. I think that's such an important thing to be able to do that. And I know that there's if you go to like we have like West Houston Archery, of course it's like an archery shop. You're going to be able to shoot there too, but there's a lot of sporting stores that they don't have that. And if you're able to go out there and test it, 5, 6, whatever it is, and someone be like, hey, for that application, this is going to not be the right one for you because this and that, like have an expert be able to walk you through. I think there's some people who are like they're brand loyal, like you were saying too. But if it's like I don't care about brand loyalty in that sense as much anymore. I want to go ahead and try to fit what is going to be best for that application. And I think, when you have that flexibility and stuff too, and that open mind, you can like listen to the experts that are over at Scheels and they can walk you through and find out what's the right fit for you. That's super important, man. So yeah, I highly
mm-hmm,
encourage anyone who's around a Scheels store to go and do that and really kind of get what you really need, not just what you think you might want.
mm-hmm, absolutely. Apologize if I'm sounding like a Shields poster boy here, but it's kind of my job. It's what
Kind of
I
your
do.
job. No, but it is what I mean. Like, look, I didn't even know really. I've been ordering stuff from Scheels for at least the last 3, maybe 4 years. I got into long range shooting, and I found that Scheels had online everything I needed as far as my components for my bullets, and I was doing tons of ordering, and I didn't even realize how big Scheels was, and because in Texas we didn't have one here, right? So I just like, oh yeah, it's an outdoor store somewhere. I didn't know there was so many somewheres. And then when I went to the Colony to go, for the Ranella event, I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. Now I understand why they had so many things available online, because you guys have like the biggest mega stores. And I know that Texas is, like you said too, even you had the saucers in your eyes, right? Because it's, Texas, everything's bigger, right? Well, apparently the Shields
Mm-hmm.
was too. I think the guy told me, he's like, yeah, it's the biggest one, to date. But when you got a Ferris wheel and you got your candy shop, saw a guy walking around with the cold beer. Like I was just like, there's a restaurant over there. I'm like, obviously the huge aquarium you're walking under. I was like, this place. It felt like in Houston we have played the Galleria, which is like this world famous mall, 3 stories. I was like, I felt like I was in the Galleria. Like I felt like I was in this mega mall, and I'm like, each
Yeah.
like division. I was like, there's the baseball section. That could be like the biggest baseball store that you have in Texas. And then there's the, football. And everything was just massive, but anything you can imagine you'd want, you
Mm-hmm.
can go test it out, and you got experts there. So
Yeah.
I
I
can
mean, the goal
understand being
is
a
to
fanboy.
really, yeah, the goal is to really make those stores a destination instead of just something you got to check off your shopping list.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
we've got candy stores and Ferris wheels and wildlife mountains, and like even in our Eden Prairie store, we've got a hockey rink in there, so you can test out your hockey skates or just like skate around a little bit. There's like arcade shooting stuff. Like there's just a little something for everybody. And I mean, I just stick to my outdoor realm, but like there's literally something in those stores for everyone, from like your team sports enthusiasts to your fashionistas to everything.
Yeah,
Like,
there's furniture too. Like
yeah,
at the
exactly.
Texas one, I'm
We've
sitting
even
on a
got a hard yeah, we've even got a hardware store up in Fargo and Moorhead here. So that's kind of how it originated. It's like Scheels started in 1902. The Scheels person sold his potato farm and started a hardware store, and it branched into what we got right now. So it's just a crazy story. But like, if you can't find something you're interested in at Scheels, like I I don't know, man, because it like literally everything from hunting and fishing to your fashion and your sports and everything in between. Like I stay in my lane though. Like I don't know a lot about shoes. I might have like 17 pairs of Sorels in my house, but I don't wear any of them. It's funny, like it's dangerous working at Scheels too, because it's like you have access to this sort of stuff all the time. And it's like, I swear, like some of my paychecks I don't even see, because it's like, okay, I need backpacks for the girls. Mama needs a new pair of shoes. I need a new fishing tackle box. I need a new bow. The new trail camera it's dangerous. You
yeah,
got to
paid
learn to
to the
like,
order of
you got to
Shields
learn to
here.
kind of pump the brakes a little bit. It's, I love
That's
it at the
important.
same time, too. But anyways, dialing it back to like the content that we're going to be putting out. That's just is a long roundabout way to get to what we're coming out with.
We cartwheeled
But
around, but it's okay. Yeah.
we did a couple cartwheels. We're also doing some stuff on crossbows too. That's becoming a lot more prevalent nowadays.
Mm.
Like, locally here, Minnesota just passed. It's legal to hunt crossbows during archery season. Like there's a lot of questions about that, whether right, wrong, or indifferent. But we want to have them available for the people that want them, and we want to educate people about them, about what they can do, what you need to do. So we shot a bunch of stuff on crossbows, and um, I got to be part of that video, and it was cool shooting some of the new Raven ones, and the new 10-point ones, and like one of them that there was this sniper package one, and I dialed it to 80 yards, and my first shot I hit like a dot the size of a golf ball. First shot, first time ever picking up this thing. It's like, wow, these things are game changers. And then they've got other ones too. Like Raven's got one that has this cam system where instead of like your traditional one where they're either out the side or parallel with the frame of the crossbow, these ones are vertical. So then it's like the profile on it is so much smaller, and you could take the stock off of it, and it's like the size of a pistol. but it's shooting 350 feet per second. So like the guy I was talking with from Raven, he's like, yeah, last week I killed a black bear with this thing. And I'm like, what? It's just nuts, the advancements that are going on nowadays. And it's like you pump so much speed out of it, but you still need to have it be forgiving at the same time and be able to like uh, still be functional and safe and all that. And another thing with the crossbows nowadays that we wanted to especially show off in this video is like the ability to cock and decock silently and safely. Because a lot of times, like with a lot of crossbows, it's like, oh, I'm done with the end of the hunt. I need to like shoot into a target or into the ground to like disengage it. But now it's like, oh, I can just put this lever on and decock it and I can let go and it doesn't spin. And it's like, it's wild what they come up with. And, you know, it's great for hunters that are just getting started, like getting kids into it or getting, you know, people that maybe can't pull a regular bow back.
Right.
I mean, like I'm not going to say if it's not legal, don't use it. It's obviously going to change the effectiveness of hunting. Maybe we'll see different regulations in a few years, things like that. It's always kind of like a natural ebb and flow of like introducing things that are potentially game changing to you know, like sort of coming back to an equilibrium on things. So it's like we're in the stage right now where we want to deliver information on it, let you know that it's available, and if you have any additional questions, seek out, you know, like reach out to us. So we've got the bow stuff, the crossbow stuff coming up, and then we also do like a lot of entertaining stuff at the same time too. Like we just came out with a like we've started doing a couple of running series. It started out in our fishing time of year as like a lure of the week. So we come out with a different lure each week. So we started out like, you know, sitting in our meeting powwow, like, all right, we want to come out with a lure of the week. We got this, we got a couple of lures we want to come out with. The jigging shadow wrap and the Berkeley slobber knocker were 1 and 2. Interesting name, I know, if you haven't fished with it, but it's a very effective, and it's actually become my new favorite bass lure. Chatterbait paddleboard bass fishing. That's my jam. I use
There you
that
go.
Berkeley slobber knocker now. Green pumpkin. That one's my favorite. And put a fighting frog jig trailer on there. But I digress on that. Anyways, but I actually lost my train of thought. What
Oh,
were we
just
talking
the
about?
idea about
Oh,
your
lure of
videos
the
and
week.
yeah. Yeah, the lure of the week.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. Thank you for reeling me back in.
Ha
Lure of the
ha.
week. Just progressional stuff like somebody can tune in and follow along with the process and get a new lure every week. Cool concept.
Yeah.
So we shot the first couple, like shot the Berkeley slobber knocker, talking about it, talking about what it's good for, using maybe some vendor content to like loop in there to really show like it flying CGI slow motion through the air and make it look cool. And then we moved on to like the Rapala jigging shadow wrap. Do you walleye fish at all?
I haven't yet, but I'm getting more excited by the minute here.
Okay, so walleye is a different beast. They're it's interesting. Like the olden age process for walleye was like these are a hard to catch fish. You have to be super finessey, and you know like put something through the exact zone at the exact rate, and they can't feel your rod tip, and then you have to like feed them line and catch them, and you maybe get a few a day. Sometimes you really get into them, but as we've learned, they're a predator fish, so you can target them in different ways. Glide baits is a very effective way to do it. Instead of like trying to give them the perfect easy meal, now you're trying to get aggression and reaction strikes. Like, I'm challenging you at the top of the food chain. You're going to eat me because I pissed you off. So like this is the type of like glide bait stuff. And the shadow wrap is it's a version of a jigging wrap, which is like a just a big hunk of metal you throw out and it erratically moves and the fish chase it down. But the problem, not necessarily a problem, it moves really fast and the fish can't really catch it all the time, and they'll have to like pin it to the bottom to actually catch it. And with this shadow wrap, it's longer and it's lighter, and it kind of glides a little more through the water, so the fish can catch it while it's moving a little bit, but it still has that like erratic action. So we want to show that off. So we like had a video where we wanted to shoot some Scheels rods, and it's like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to talk about these new shadow wraps. So we got to take some of that footage and like we baked it for like 8 months. It's like, I want to release this. This lure isn't on the market yet, but we got 2 prototypes at Scheels because like we're Scheels. We have access to some of
Right.
that stuff. So it's like I couldn't talk about it for 8 months, besides with like a select few people that I'm like give my non-disclosure agreement by. Like, you can't tell anybody about this, but
Right.
we got some really cool stuff coming up. And then so like I got to turn it into like a lure of the week segment. So it's like, okay, and then you kind of learn how people react to it, if they like it or not. It's like, and then we do some videos in store where we're showing off the product, but we're not in the boat. And it's like, well, they're not as excited about that. So it's like, okay, now let's take this information and we'll send it out to our associates. And we're like, okay, you go out fishing. I'm going to give you lure topics or whatever you're catching on that's we sell at our store. Fair game. Come up with something really cool. Catch some fish, talk about it. And then it morphed into like something that I didn't really expect, which turned into like, okay, I'm taking this lure out of the fish's mouth because I just caught it and release it. And then I'm going to give you a tip about how to use this lure too. Like a great example was our St. Cloud store went and fished with Josh Douglas, the professional bass fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave a tip on his favorite topwater lure, because topwater lure is becoming more prevalent in that, like that part of the country at that specific time. But I'm going to use the Shimano World Pop, this popper bait. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut two or so feet of fluorocarbon, like a heavier, like a 25-pound fluoro, and use that in the front, because not only is it going to be more abrasion resistant, help with those nicks and cuts, but what it does is like he normally throws braided line, and that braided line doesn't have like memory to it. It just kind of moves around a lot, and in the water that could potentially catch one of them treble hooks on there, and then you screwed up a cast. But if you put that fluoro leader on there, it's a lot more rigidity to it, so it's not going to get caught in those treble hooks as much. So it's like, that's a wonderful tip to give to people.
Yeah.
So like, I'm going to use a lure that's effective at this time, and now I know a way to use it more effectively because I'm not going to get the line caught in my treble hooks now. And it's like, that's just some really cool information that we're able to give out now, that came from like, hey, let's do lure of the week, to, hey, we're giving super valuable information to people now, which is super cool. And yeah, and we're translating that into the hunting stuff too a little bit. It's it's going to be archery question of the week. So if you saw our social pages, the first one kicked off this past week, and this one was a little bit more just entertainment. You're not getting any value of it, but it was, what would you rather do? Would you rather keep archery hunting, or would you rather give up archery hunting completely, or would you rather keep hunting knowing that at some point in your lifespan you're going to get chased by a grizzly bear? It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Like, do you give up hunting, or do you keep hunting knowing you're going to get chased? What do you do?
Oh, I saw the answer from the guy who was like, grizzly, I'm going to have to go for it. Like, I think, not being a big archery guy myself, it's probably a different category for me answering it there too. But yeah, it's like, it goes back to like the Brunella thing where he and his like brother and stuff, they made like a pact where it's like, listen, if a grizzly takes us out, we don't tell anyone else where the remains are. We just let ourselves go back to the earth. And, that was it. That was the proper send off. And it's like, you just think about like the danger of the total apex predator coming out after you. Yeah, I don't know, man. For me, I think I'm not familiar enough around that. I might have to go ahead and give up archery since I don't really do it all that much right now to begin with. It would probably be an easy choice as opposed to
Yeah,
having to run down a
I'd
grizzly.
agree. I'd agree with you on that one. And unfortunately, that wasn't something I thought about when I was trying to come up with ideas on the fly. And somebody put that in the comments too. He's like, well, I would just move to rifle hunting instead. And I'm like, touche, guy, but you're not playing
You
along.
have to
That
play the
wasn't
game.
fun. Yeah. It's like, all right, I'll let that one slide, but it's kind of, you got me on
I'm gonna
that
go with
one.
getting chased by a grizzly. Final answer. There you go.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. I
I'll
think
play.
about that myself too, and I'm not quite sure yet because, like, if we're being realistic, like, it's easy to, when a camera's in front of you, to say, "Oh, I'll get chased by a grizzly bear," but like, when you know the situation's actually going to come about, like, I've done a decent amount of hunting where there's bears. Like, I've never encountered, like, I've seen grizzly bears at like Yellowstone National Park when I'm in a car and stuff, and like, okay, cool, whatever. But like, I was on this hunt in Colorado where I was elk hunting, and I was like probably 4 miles away from camp, going back on these draws, and I sat at this little meadow water hole, and I'm waiting for elk, and then all of a sudden I hear crash and come out of the woods. I'm like, all right, yeah, it's go time. And then all of a sudden I see this little black blob come out, and I'm like, oh, that's a black bear, sweet. And then another little black blob came out, and then I was like, oh, those are cubs. Where's the mama? So then the mama comes out, and she's all of 400 pounds, probably like 400 to 450 would be my guess. It's not super easy to judge bears, but like, I know a big bear when I see one, especially when you got little cubs in front. And this one's
Right.
like gigantic. Like, it's a big bear. And then she was like sitting around watching her cubs, and then they kind of meandered off to the side. Wind was perfect because like they came to the waterhole area where I wanted to potentially shoot an elk. So then sunset came, and then I had to leave, and I didn't know where these bears were. So I start trekking off, and after about 200 yards or so, I hear crashing behind me, and then I hear like heavy breathing, and it's like, oh, mama finally realized that I was in her home turf. So it's the middle of the night. I'm 4 miles away from my vehicle. I don't have. I was dumb and didn't bring any gun or any like handgun or anything like that. So I've got like some cheap bear pepper spray, but like, I'm 4 miles away from my vehicle in the middle of the night. I got a 450 pound black bear, angry and falling right behind me, like heavy breathing and crash and stuff, like, get out of my home. So I'm like, well, if she's going to attack me, there's nothing I can do right now because I don't have anything to defend myself. So I'm just going to try and stay as calm as I can and walk out of here and be like, honey, I'm getting out of your place. Like, I can't teleport right now. Like, I got to walk out of here. So just, I'm not messing with you. I respect your distance. Sorry I was in your area, but I'm going to get out of here. And I was hunting with a buddy too. And he was like probably 3/4 of a mile up the draw closer to the truck. So like, I finally get to the spot because he was going to wait for me and we are going to walk out together. And then so I finally get to him. I'm like, you see anything? No, I didn't see anything tonight. And he asked me, I'm like, yeah, I didn't really see anything either, but I just want to give you a heads up that I have three bears following me right now. I've been walking about 3/4 of a mile. So like, I don't think they're going to attack us. But when you hear stuff crashing and moaning and groaning back there, we have a large bear behind us. So, and he looks at me, he's like, you're messing with me, right? And I'm like, no. And then he heard a twig snap and is like, oh my God, you're serious right now. Okay. Cause like, he didn't have a sidearm either. So like, we just had to kind of walk out of there. And that was a little bit of a puckering experience.
It sounds like it, man.
So yeah, just the bear though. So like, I have a newfound respect for bears after that. It was like, when you actually have an experience, it's like, maybe you kind of think twice about that answer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You were like,
so I'm gonna,
listen, I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to put down my archery equipment here. You can attack it. Leave me be. I'm done. I will retire that.
yeah, because it's not like you can climb a tree or nothing. They can climb up
Now,
20
yeah.
times faster than you can.
Yep. What do
So
they say? You
I'm
can
just
run. You only
thankful.
die tired, right?
Yeah, I'm just thankful like I didn't get in between the
Yeah.
bear and her cubs
Yep.
because that probably wouldn't have turned out very well.
Yep.
But yeah, it's crazy. I've had a couple stories like that. Like, it's just some interesting experiences when you're out in the field.
Well,
So
those are the things, that, a lot of people don't realize. It's like the the trophies in my mind most of the time is the meals that I have with my friends and my family, right? That's like the thing that at the culmination of hunts, but it's these times, these experiences, you see these animals, you have these interactions that it's just hard to translate that unless maybe you've had a camera or video or whatever, but like, your stories there, those kinds of things, like it's you feel alive, you experience, and you're in the element. And those things are those trophy experiences for me. Like I love to be able to tell these stories, share them with people. I could listen to them and talk about them all day. But I know you and I both probably got some other things to attend to today, so we'll have to pick this back up again, and maybe we'll do like a storyteller section where we can kind of share some other ones soon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the time. And yeah, I got a couple more good stories. I got a really good mountain lion story. So
Ooh, okay. Well, then, you know what? This will be like you had the part one and part two. We're going to have to do that as well. So we'll have the Mike Anderson part one and part two to be continued soon. And, before we do sign off, if you can go ahead and tell people where they can learn more about you, about Scheels, the places to follow, and where to go for all that.
yeah, absolutely. So our social structure is a little bit interesting. Like all of our stores have their own Facebook and Instagram pages. So if you're near like our new Wichita store or near Fargo or near the Colony in Texas, you can search like your store name and then follow those local pages and you really have that local feel. Like they talk about community events and partnerships and things like that. And then there's like our main Scheels pages. We've got three different, we actually call them like pillars because they're different types of our business.
Sure.
There's the style one, which I don't really have much interest in and stay out of. And then there's the sports one where you talk about all those team sports. And then you've got the outdoors one. And the outdoors one's my jam, obviously.
Yep.
So basically, you just search Scheels Outdoors for everything. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and recently on the Instagram Threads app too. So you can find them there. Oh, and the podcast, obviously.
Yep.
Type in Scheels Outdoors podcast to your favorite listening platform, and we're on there too. So that's where I can really like dive into the weeds on stuff and get to storytelling and meeting all these interesting people and really getting that combination of education and entertainment.
No, it's great, man. It's a fun listen, and you guys got some amazing content. You're putting out some great stuff there for them. I highly suggest everyone go check it out. And thank you for coming here today and for sharing your time with us. And definitely looking forward to part two, mountain lion stories and more.
There we go. Perfect. Greatly appreciate your time.
Cheers, man. We'll talk soon. You take care.
You too.
Bye bye.